Before continuing with my and or scene-by-scene project, it's time for another special edition where I examine authoritarianism in my favourite sci-fi and pulp stories. Last time I looked at Plaisir 15's performative yoga justice in The Mandalorian and how that world is begging for a dark authoritarian takeover. This time I want to look at the authoritarian pitch, with a P. Because authoritarianism rarely comes in and just takes everything from you. More often it asks. And the sad part is we say yes, every time. It sidles up to you, says something it knows you'll like, and then makes its pitch. The Illusive Man's first conversation with Shepard is a demonstration of power, but it's also staged as a choice. A recruitment pitch disguised as inevitability. The scene is reasonably static in terms of movement. The Illusive Man in his throne-like chair, immaculate in suit and shoes, framed against the burning disk of a star. Shepard from our POV is reduced to a flickering hologram gesturing mildly, but literally unable to move 2 steps without vanishing. The geometry of the scene does most of the authoritarian work before a word is spoken. He is rooted, sovereign, not that one, and unblinking. She is provisional, insubstantial, and dependent on the infrastructure he controls. The dialogue reinforces that imbalance. When Shepard presses him on secrecy, why not meet face to face, he reframes the precaution as intimacy. Not unusual for people who know what you and I know. In a single line, he collapses their relationship into an in-group of 2, putting himself on Shepard's level even though he positions himself above everyone else. That's the authoritarian trick. Elevate the subject by flattery and then bind them to your frame of reference. His rhetoric is stripped of grandeur but packed with inevitability. Entire human colonies are vanishing, he says, and no one else will act. Cerberus has stepped in because the alliance is too slow, politicians too cautious. This isn't seduction through charisma, it's seduction through narrowing the frame of options. If you accept his premise, the only survivable path is the one he offers. When Shepard points out that the resources spent resurrecting her could have trained an army, he pivots to symbolic conscription. Shepard isn't just a soldier, she's a flag. She represents humanity to the galaxy, and the Reapers must respect her because she killed one of their own. It's authoritarian myth-making in real time. Turn the operative into a legend and then use that legend as leverage. The most insidious move comes at the end. Shepard asks if this is a choice or a conscription. The Illusive Man replies, you always have a choice, but the choice he offers is a closed loop. Go to freedom's progress on his shuttle with his agents using his resources, or walk away with nothing. It's a performance of autonomy that hides the coercion baked into the situation. And threaded through the whole exchange is the unspoken fact of debt. Shepard's body is Cerberus property now, we built at colossal expense. The Illusive Man never has to say, you owe me, his ownership is written into the skin she's wearing. What's striking, especially on rewatch, is how short and reasonable the scene feels. There's no grand speech, no overt seduction. The gap is the point. The Illusive Man isn't a Bond villain, he's a bureaucratic authoritarian. His power lies in what he makes inevitable. You're not convinced by him, you're funneled by him. And that is exactly how authoritarian control works at its most effective. It doesn't need to shout. It just closes every door until the one you walk through looks like your own idea. Lilah's re-entrance into Angel at the end of Season 4 is one of the show's sharpest demonstration of how Wolfram and Hart operates. This authoritarian pitch slinks in with a skirt, perfect makeup and high heels. She arrives at the Hyperion with a sarcastic sneer, undercutting Angel's grief-soaked brooding with a line that reframes their recent trauma as punchline. End world peace? You already took care of that. The opening quip tells us everything. The gang are wounded, raw, and disoriented. Lilah asserts control by mocking the very seriousness of the moment. Authoritarianism doesn't always need a fist. Sometimes it destabilizes you by refusing to share your frame of reference. Her presence itself is a power play. She's still dead, bound to Wolfram and Hart by a contract whose perpetuity clause extends beyond the grave. Lilah becomes the perfect embodiment of institutional authoritarianism. Individuals come and go, but the system ensures their service never ends. It endures. It's not resurrection, it's bureaucracy. The pitch she delivers is almost laughably straightforward. Game over, you win, that's why I'm here, I've been authorized to make you kids an offer. She dresses it as surrender, the senior partners are ceding territory and offering control of the LA branch to Angel Investigations as a reward. The language of reward is deliberate. By framing the transfer as the spoils of victory, she invites the group to feel powerful even as they are being invited into compromise. Notice how the sales language slides into the banal: assets, personnel, letterheads, paper clips. Throughout the whole series of Angel, apocalyptic evil is presented in the idiom of office administration. By trivializing the machinery of corruption, Lilah makes it sound like a practical opportunity instead of a moral catastrophe. When the gang initially balks, she destabilizes their moral certainty. Their slaying of Jasmine was, in their eyes, the liberation of humanity from a hive-minded tyranny. Lilah reframes it as sabotage. They ended world peace, and then she needles them with utilitarian logic. Jasmine consumed a couple of dozen souls a day. Was that really so terrible when billions were happy? The argument isn't meant to persuade, it's meant to cloud. Authoritarian rhetoric thrives on moral mud. If nothing is clear, then anything is permitted. The most chilling move is how she closes. No threats, no force, just think about her proposal. If anyone's interested, there'll be a limo waiting outside just before dawn. It's an illusion of choice. They're free to refuse, but the staging makes refusal almost unthinkable. The brilliance of the scene is that it stages authoritarianism not as a conquest, but as a gift. Lilah never says you will serve, she says you won, here's your prize. The poison is in the framing. To accept the victory is to accept the terms. That's Wolfram and Hart in a nutshell. They don't seize your soul, they make you sign for it, with pen, paperclip and a smile. Placed side by side, the two pictures are mirrors held at different angles. The elusive man couches inevitability in the language of necessity, while Lilah dresses surrender in the language of reward. One insists only he is willing to act, the other insists Angel has already won. Both strategies funnel their subject into the same trap: accept the poisoned gift and call it your own decision. They also reveal two faces of authoritarian rhetoric. The elusive man flattens moral complexity into crisis management. He gives Shepard facts, colonies vanish, politicians blind, and waits for her to conclude that Cerberus is the only rational path. Lilah does the opposite. She muddies moral clarity until victory looks like sabotage, until liberation can be reframed as the destruction of peace. Where the elusive man narrows the frame of choice, Lilah smears it. The endgame is the same: disorient your subject until the one path forward feels preordained. Even their tones are instructive. The elusive man's performance is cool, static, bureaucratic. Lilah's is sardonic, mocking and playful. He seduces by presenting himself as inevitable. She seduces by refusing to take anything seriously. But both tonal strategies serve the same purpose: to make refusal look foolish. What unites them is that neither forces obedience. There is no ultimatum, no command. Instead, both mask coercion as generosity. You always have a choice. You won, this is your prize. These are not threats but invitations. The genius and the horror of the authoritarian pitch is that you walk into it yourself. The moment Lilah leaves, Angel scoffs at the proposal, dismisses it as preposterous, and in that blunt Angel way effectively closes the discussion. The implied order is, no one goes near that limo. Angel investigations, battle-scarred but righteous, will not be bought. And then comes the garden scene. One by one the gang slip out into the night, each of them creeping towards the gate as if they're sneaking off to a guilty pleasure. They're startled to find each other, each of them having made the same secret calculation. The offer might be poison, but it's irresistible. They speak in low voices, as if Angel mustn't overhear. And of course, Angel is already there, waiting, lurking outside, as if to punctuate their collective hypocrisy. That would be a fine gag on its own, Angel catching them in the act of betraying his final word. But in one of my favourite long-form TV gags ever, there's a second punchline waiting. The door of the limo swings open, and instead of ominous silence and pumping dance music spills out onto the street. And there's Lorne, cocktail in hand, already settled in, bantering with the driver about evil limos as if it was the most natural thing in the world. First we laugh at the gang's hypocrisy, then we laugh again when we realise Lorne hasn't just accepted the corrupt offer, he's embraced it with glee. The irony is cruel and beautiful. Lorne, the most good-hearted of the group, the one who seemed angriest and most disgusted by Wolfram and Hart, is also the first to give in, and because it's Lorne, the most lovable of them all, we love him more for it. That's the sting. Authoritarianism doesn't just seduce the ruthless or the weary, it seduces the kind, the funny, the ones you'd least expect, and sometimes it seduces them in a way that makes you laugh with delight. And where does it all lead? Season 5 tells us. The team take the deal. Angel becomes CEO. Each of them is seduced in their own way by the resources, the access, the toys, and it corrodes them, bit by bit. Gunn, in particular, is transformed by Wolfram and Hart. a gift that leads directly to Fred's death and Illyria's rebirth. The season culminates in Angel choosing to decapitate Wolfram and Hart from within to take on the Circle of the Black Thorn in open war. LA is dragged into hell, literally. Fred is dead, Wesley is dead, Gunn is about to be dead, the survivors stand bloodied in an alley, ready for a last stand they can't win. Was the choice worth it? Was saying yes to Wolfram and Hart a terrible mistake, or the only path that gave them the strength to strike at the Black Thorn? The show never answers. The ambiguity is the point. The message is to keep fighting no matter how hard it is. The limo gag promised fun, paperclips, cocktails in the dark. The ending delivered fire raining from the sky and dragons. But the contrast with Shepard is sharp. The Illusive Man never explicitly asks her to join him. There's no will you work with me or will you take the deal. The first conversation ends with the illusion of choice, but by their next encounter he simply talks as if they are partners. Shepard is never given the dignity of refusal. Her yes is implied by the structure of the relationship. The question is never asked because the answer was preordained. And how does that end up? The Illusive Man's logic collapses under the weight of his obsession. By Mass Effect 3 he is shifted from preserve humanity to control the Reapers, seduced not by necessity but by domination. Shepard, depending on the player's choices, can confront him in his final moments, a man convinced he was saving humanity even as he's revealed as indoctrinated, a pawn of the very enemy he swore to master. Set side by side, the two pictures reveal different faces of authoritarian seduction. Angel is asked and he says yes, albeit on terms that put his traumatized son Connor above everything. Shepard is not asked and her yes is assumed, woven into the narrative as inevitability. Angel walks into the limo of his own volition. Shepard finds the ramp beneath her feet has been angled so there is no way down but forward. Both arcs end in ruin. Wolfram and Hart's gift corrodes Angel's team from within. Fred's death, Gunn's compromise, Wesley's destruction. The Illusive Man's gift corrodes himself. The Patriot becomes the indoctrinated tyrant. In both stories, the authoritarian pitch works, not because it convinces, but because it closes the doors around its subject until compliance feels like the only move left. Take back control. Build the wall. Stop the boats. The trains will run on time. Restore the greatness of the Centauri Empire. Every single time, it turns out it was bollocks. And that's the bleak brilliance these stories capture. Authoritarianism doesn't just seize power, it frames power as an offer. Flattering, mocking, narrowing, cajoling, until we walk willingly into the trap, sometimes with a weary nod, sometimes with a cocktail in hand. Next time I do a special edition, I'm looking at what happens when you completely reject the illusion of authoritarian choice. Until then, I hope you will join me for the next episode of Andor, and if you're not watching Andor, what are you doing? Watch it and then watch my deep dives.